Can you have a name for the podcast?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, guys, welcome to our podcast. Today we are talking about toxic relationships. I'm here with Bryn Sherwood / my wife. And Bryn, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Bryn. I don't know what my last name is actually, because I'm like married, but not. Actually, that's not my last name. So
She hasn't changed her
I
last name.
haven't changed my last name. But yeah, this is my man.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to this place?
Please, mentally,
How did you
physically?
find your success in life?
I haven't yet, so.
Okay, good answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just
And I
keeping it
haven't
real.
either.
All
I
right,
haven't
yeah,
either.
so listen to us, because we know so much
All
about
right,
success.
so let's start us off with question one. And like I said, we're doing toxic relationships today. And question one is, from your dating experiences, what's the biggest red flag to you and why?
When a man or woman, not discriminating, is extremely either clingy or extremely distant, and they feel like having to put in time is way too much effort, and then vice versa, where it's just like they're just sucking the life out of you. So I think a balance of not relying too much on me and also not just like pretending like you don't need me all of a sudden, wishy-washy. So I think it's about the balance of that.
And you
But
think that's the biggest?
that's not the biggest. There are so many.
So what's the biggest?
I think, well, this is also not the biggest, but when they are scared of like quote unquote settling down, because there's no such thing as settling down.
Yeah.
When they're
Yeah, we
scared
don't
of
believe
that,
in
it's
that.
like, we are just think that way. It's like us getting married is not settling down. The
Yeah.
journey is starting. Like, we're about to
Yeah.
have some fun.
I know a lot of people
So-
think the process ends when you start like settling down and you get married, but really that's when it begins. That's how we think of it.
Yeah, I hate when guys are like, my freedom is ending when I begin a relationship.
Yeah.
No, ma'am.
Definitely not like that. Shouldn't be looked at like that either. So if you're in a relationship like that, it's probably a little toxic. You should probably dip.
What's your biggest red flag in a significant other, or just when you're dating and you're like, that's odd?
Yeah. Biggest significant red
There's
flag.
so many that he's experienced, so this may take a few moments. Bear with us.
When my significant other doesn't have a good coping mechanism and it results to like a toxic one, like cutting or like drinking or smoking. And that if that's how they cope, I think that's really, really toxic.
Yeah.
It's not something that's like gonna bring you up as a person, being around another person that's like that and coping that way all the time. You want someone that's finding the right coping mechanisms. Like you and I, we love going to the gym, and that's like a big coping mechanism for us, and we really, really like enjoy that too. Like not even is it just like a coping mechanism when we're feeling sad, but it's also something that we enjoy and we bond on. And I feel like that's super, super important in relationships, because like I said, if you have a bad coping mechanism, you're bringing that person down. If you have a good one and one that you can do together,
Even
like
better.
it doesn't even have to be a coping mechanism. It can just be a hobby that you go to when you're sad sometimes, you know. I think that's super important.
Yes. Having them find healthy coping mechanisms is key. Now, I have another question for you. How big of an impact do you think your partner's views, beliefs, and values affects your own?
I think there's a huge impact.
Which can be controversial for some people. Because,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people are like, no, it's fine. We can view things separately. However, to what extent?
I think the impact it has is pretty big. You can obviously you're gonna have your own opinions, and that's completely fine. But I think the impact, like if you were a raging liberal and I was a raging conservative, we wouldn't blend in the beginning, and we'd be fighting a lot more than we do.
True.
And because we have, like, not all of our opinions are the exact same, but because a lot of our opinions are very similar, and not even that, but we're understanding of our differences. We're not at the point where if you think something different than me, I'm not going to be mad about that. I'm not gonna like get really upset with that.
There's a couple things we do disagree on, which is normal. No two people are going to think the exact same.
Yeah.
That's just not how life works.
Yeah, but if you can accept each other's differences, I think that that's really important.
Yeah, this is true. I think it doesn't have to be every little, because, people say opposites attract, which can be true to an extent, but your values and your morals, I think, need to be aligned. Mm-hmm. And then the little details can, vary, of course, because if you just have two completely different ideals in life, it is very hard to work through it together, or else it's really just going to be two people technically together doing their lives separately.
I think addictions are like a huge factor when it comes to like relationship health. Right? Because if you are going through something and you bring that to a significant other, like that will just destroy that relationship that you build. For me personally, my family, like there's a lot of addiction in my blood, and I'm fully aware of that. And because I'm aware of that, it's a lot easier for me to avoid those things.
Right.
Uncle passed away and smoked himself to death, right? Flippin' loved the dude. He was the best dude ever, but he couldn't get over the smoking problem. And then gambling problems run in my family too. And because I know of this, it's very easy for me to be like, okay, I'm going to stay as far away from this as possible, because I don't even want to have a taste of what it's like. And as long as I stay far away from that, I know everything will be okay, because one, the Lord is watching over us, and He is going to protect and guide us. And He knows my thoughts. He knows my intentions. And He knows that I know that these things will bring me down. And so I stay as far away from them as possible. And because obviously I've seen relationships where one person is addicted to gambling, one person is addicted to smoking, and it just destroys it. And a lot of divorce comes from that as well.
This is true. I mean, if you're putting something before your significant other, that's not going to work, because there can only be two people in a relationship. And if you're focusing on that other person with an object or a thing, then of course it's not going to work, because you can't have three things in a relationship. So
besides God. Yeah.
Besides God. It's a triangle.
Yes.
God,
yes,
us, yes. But you can't have four things. It would be a square. So you know how I feel about squares.
She doesn't like squares.
I have a fear of them. Anyways.
Okay.
How do you prevent or spot selfishness in yourself while being in a relationship, and what steps do you take to reassess?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to like self-awareness, right? Like, are you able to be self-aware of what you're doing wrong? Because you can look at the world with the perspective of, oh, everyone's looking at, this is called the spotlight effect, where you're terrified of what people think of you, and you're thinking, oh, everyone's looking at me, so I have to be super careful with what I do, right? And you see this a lot at college parties and college events. People are terrified of what other people think about them. But the truth is, and this is the spotlight effect, everyone is thinking about what people are thinking about them, and no one is actually judging other people because they're judging themselves so harshly, right? So if you can take that thought and that perspective and flip it and say, all right, if everyone is judging themselves, I can loosen up a little bit, I can relax a little bit, and I can go out and find the person that I want to be with, or the friends that I want to find in this life. you should definitely be able to recognize the things that you're doing wrong, not even selfishness, just the things you're doing wrong in a relationship, and you need to work on that. That's something that you should always be reflecting on. You should be writing it down like once a week in a journal, if that's what it takes for if
Whatever
your
works for
relationship,
you, yeah.
if you feel like your relationship's falling apart, you need to be writing down, okay, this is what's bothering me about them, but what am I doing wrong? What can I do differently to make it better
Right.
for us both?
Right.
But what do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's also important to not nitpick on the other person, especially because, you know, there's probably a lot of things that I could be doing better. So I'm not going to look at you and be like, wow. Because I'm like, I know I have more dandelions in my field. You know, I'm not even going to start there.
Yeah, tell them the dandelion.
The
analogy.
dandelions. I think we've heard this before, but it's basically the story of you're looking at your neighbors and they have a couple dandelions, a couple weeds in their yard, and you're like, I cannot even imagine how they let this get so awry. And then in your own freaking yard is just full of dandelions, full of weeds. And you're so focused on your neighbor, and you're like, wow, you have 2 whole dandelions. You probably have like 1,200.
And
you know?
you're not actually.
So, but not to like compare either, because that's not what a relationship is for. But self-reflection. I think I usually am aware when I do something. I'm like, ooh, that was a little crazy. Let's take it down a notch. When I see that happen, I need to be like, I did not like how that made me feel, and I know you don't like how that made you feel. So I'm like, I don't want that to happen again. Let's fix what I just did there.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to also, sometimes you need to dive right in, and sometimes you need to let it sit for a little bit, depending on the situation. Because sometimes we don't need to be like, hey, why'd you do that? Hey, why'd you do that? Sometimes it's better if we like ponder about it, have it calm down, and then be like, so what was going on in your mind when that happened? You know? However, I think if you shove it down too much and too far, if you tell me in a month that I've been doing something that's been bugging you, I'm going to be like, why didn't you tell me? You know,
Earlier, yeah.
I think the earlier is better. And it's okay if you get momentarily offended, because I will like get over it within 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? I'll be sad, and then I'll be like, wow, I suck. And then I'll be like, you know what? This is easy to fix. And then I move on, and that's fine. So sometimes you just got to solve it. Small little thing happens before it gets a bunch of small things collectively making one big issue. Then we never have a big issue. It's just a bunch of little small ones that we wipe out as we go.
So going back to the first question I asked you, you said you think it's very important that they're not too clingy and that they're not too distant.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, what are the top 5 things you think is super important that a guy has in a relationship
That a guy has
or brings to the table in a relationship?
in order to not be too codependent?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you need to kind of be confident in yourself, because if you
confidence.
if you are jumping into a relationship to find yourself, it's not going to work. You need to already be like, hey, I've kind of accepted this is where I'm at now. That's how I feel like it happened for us. We were like both, you know, like, yeah, we are our own people. And then we kind of found each other, and we're like, wow, this is great. It wasn't like, oh, I need to date you so you can help me and I help you. We weren't jumping in to use each other as a clutch, you know? Crutch, sorry. So, yeah. Confidence in yourself.
Just go with 3, actually.
Yeah, that 5's a lot. Another thing is not being, I know insecurity is the opposite of confidence, but this is different here. I can't with insecure men. Oh my goodness. Every girl I talk to that has issues with their mans, he's insecure. And it drives me up a wall.
Give some examples of insecure, because I can think of some.
Do you want me to name drop here? Because I will.
No, don't name drop.
Oh, I will. However, it's like here's the thing. If Luke wanted to go get lunch with a girl, which would be kind of weird, but I'd be like, okay, go ahead. Because I am so confident in him that I'd be like, that thing's going to happen. Okay? Because
It's trust.
I know I am so amazing that, like, he doesn't want anything else. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know this. Okay?
And it's just trust, too.
It's trust, yeah. So I think let's replace insecurity with trust. That's a better
Okay.
word for it.
Confidence and trust.
Yeah.
What else? What's the last one? Super important to you.
I think you need to find fulfillment in something besides your partner. If you're only waiting all day just for that person just to like drop everything on them, that's not going to work because then you're using that person as a burden. I mean, yeah. So having your own life besides your partner is huge.
I completely agree with that.
Like it's okay if you guys both love doing the same things and you do it all the time together. But let's say you had a day without that person, like you have to know like what things would you want to do that would make you happy just by yourself without them. Like
Self-love.
Self-love.
So confidence, trust, and self-love.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I love that. One, confidence is huge. I agree with that whole
Confidence is
confidence speech that you gave.
Heard.
I agree with confidence.
Yeah.
A solid foundation is super important for me. So for us, that's, our faith in Jesus. Because without that, to be honest, if I didn't have a faith in Jesus and you didn't have faith in Jesus, we'd probably both be high off drugs right now, near a ditch, about to fall in it.
I don't even know.
I know
even
for
be
me,
together?
I know for me, I would be, because like I said, addiction runs through my blood, so I would be an alcoholic, a huge heavy smoker, vapor, whatever, and hooked on things that I definitely should stay away from. And I definitely don't think we would be together without the gospel and the church and the foundation that it brings to both of us. Because when we found each other, we had very similar standards. And that makes a big difference when you find someone that has the same core values and core standards. And when you stick to those together in a relationship, it's a lot easier compared to if one person has high standards and the other person doesn't have any standards. That person that has no standards is going to bring that person that has standards down if they can't hold it up themselves, which is very difficult to hold up standards yourself because you're not supposed to have to do things alone. You have God, yourself, and you should have a couple friends. You don't need a ton. You just need a couple people that are going to be behind your back and lift you up towards the best version of yourself instead of tear you down.
It's funny because when you were saying that, I was thinking about how I feel like we have grown so much individually since being together, which is crazy because we both had similar standards and morals, but you kind of brought those things back out in me, which is actually insane because, again, we really wouldn't be together without Jesus, honestly, and we wouldn't be where we are. Oh, yeah. No, it's actually insane because I feel like it wasn't like pressure, but you did make me feel like I wanted to become a better version of myself.
Yeah.
And I hope I did the same to you as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So confidence for me, a strong foundation in the gospel.
Or whatever
having
your
a faith,
beliefs are.
Whatever your beliefs are. And the third thing I think that's super, super important is being able to be like not completely dependent on another person. Like, kind of like what you were saying. So have some self-love, right? Understand yourself, really know yourself before you dive into a relationship. Because if you dive into a relationship where you don't know yourself, it's going to be very difficult to find yourself because you usually find yourself when you're at your lowest point, when you're at rock bottom. That's when you set those foundations. That's when you set those standards, boundaries, and rules for yourself to get to the successful place you want to be at.
Yeah, and I hate to say this, but I've seen this a lot. I had a really good friend that could not be in a relationship. Like, she would be broken up for a week and she would swoop someone up because she just needed to mold herself onto someone else.
Yeah.
And she would use that again to rely on instead of just saying, hey, I'm okay with just me right now.
Yeah.
And going along with that, I have something that ties into that. What is your definition of the difference between codependence and interdependence? And how do you want to make sure we aren't unhealthily reliant? Which is kind of what we were talking about, but it's like, where's the line between codepending on someone and interdependence? Like, two independent people coming together and being whole versus I'm relying on you, I'm dependent on you, I'm dependent on you.
At that point, if you're in a codependent relationship, do you really know yourself if you don't know what makes you happy without that person? Probably not, you know. And there's nothing wrong with a little bit of codependency, but if it's too much, if it's too overbearing, you know, one of you is going to drag the other person down. And one of you is going to be wanting an escape from that because, you know, you see that you have potential, but you're getting dragged down by your partner. Or you're both codependent and, you know, that also can be sticky, and it can become toxic when you spend so much time just with yourselves, or just with the other person.
Just with yourselves.
Yeah, it becomes toxic when you just spend too much time with one other person and you're not getting out and like doing things or meeting new people or hanging out with other people, right?
Right.
So,
especially early on, you know, in a relationship. It's hard though, because when you do find like your person and you become best friends with them, like it's really hard to go out in the world because everybody just kind of sucks. Like, especially in comparison, I'm like, this isn't fun. I just want to be with my bestie right now. Which I know some people have very varying opinions on them, where they're like, I should only be seeing you once a week. Obviously, we live together, so it's like kind of hard to do that. But I will say the codependence thing, I think it's important to at least have similar love languages, or at least understand your love languages. Because if one person loves quality time and the other person needs space and they just honestly want, you know, acts of service and other stuff, of course that person is going to like swaddle that person to death.
Yeah.
So at least either compromising on that, being aware of it, or maybe just finding someone who aligns.
Because if one of them is words of affirmation and then one of them is like quality time, that quality time might be annoying to you when you're constantly getting words of affirmation.
Oof, tea. Or if someone is super insecure and needs affirmation and the other person like doesn't ever give affirmation, then they're going to be like, why do you hate me? When that might not be the case.
Exactly.
So just being open. And also sometimes you kind of discover things that you, for example, when I started dating people, I was like, oh wait, I actually like touch. Because I'm kind of like, leave me alone. Like, do not hug me, do not touch me, get away from me. You can ask my family that. I'm like, please don't touch me right now. But in a romantic sense, it may be different too. So you kind of discover with that specific person. Same with quality time. There's some people I was like, I do not want to spend time with you. Turns out, just the wrong person. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. What's your mindset on significant others' baggage?
Ooh.
Because listen,
I like this.
everyone has baggage. So what's your opinion on it?
First of all, I don't know. I just want to prove that my thousands of dollars that have gone into schooling have mattered. We were learning about trauma in the classroom because I'm studying to be a teacher. And basically what I took away from this is everybody has trauma in some form or another, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of acknowledging it correctly. So when you say baggage, I think that goes hand in hand. I really hope that your significant other never views baggage as like, well, you're just effed up. Like, screw you, I'm done with you. Because that breaks my heart. Because I think everybody is the way they are because of how they were raised, the events they've been through. And to be honest, I think it oftentimes makes you a better person. If I hadn't gone through so many of the things that I've gone through, I'd probably be even more annoying than I am. You know what I'm saying? So it's like understanding that maybe your brain works a certain way because of past experiences. Mm-hmm. And just being aware of that. I think it's like maybe I'd have become more aware of what kind of like triggers you or not you specifically, but just in general.
Right. Yeah, I think, the more baggage that someone has, the more they have to be able to handle, and that can be difficult. But you don't want to bring that baggage to a relationship and dump it all in the other person's hands, right? You want to be able to hold, not even, you want to be able to hold your own weight, right? And you can talk to them about it and communicate and kind of healthily handle it. But if you just dump it all on them and then, walk away, that's not fair. What it really comes down to is, one, like I said, kind of how you're coping. How are you handling
facts
that?
If you have all this baggage and you're coping wrong.
Exactly. And two, what it also comes down to is, are you willing to accept someone for how they are, right? But three, I really don't think I would be nearly the person that I am without the things that I've been through. I don't think we would be together without the things that I've been through. And same for you. I don't think we'd be together for the things that you've been through if you hadn't been through those things, right? And so I think it's very important. And it's important to understand that God puts you through difficult things because he knows the person that you can become with those things.
Exactly.
And it might be difficult at first. It might be challenging. It might be a struggle. But listen, God is shaping you and molding you into who he knows you can become and into the best version of yourself. And if you face a trial and you turn to the world, that's not what God wanted to happen, right? But you need to turn to God after those trials and say, hey, listen, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to put this faith into you. He'll take a lot of the baggage off. And the thing is, you might be holding so much stuff, and because you're not letting God take care of it, because you're not turning to him and letting him take some of that baggage off your chest, when he throws you a new blessing or a new gift your way, you can't catch it because you're holding so much baggage. You can't catch that new bag, that new good bag he's trying to throw at you. But when you drop that baggage, when you let him handle it, and when you, in a relationship, when you turn to that person and you rely on God to help strengthen it instead of just trying to strengthen it yourself, because a relationship's a triangle, right? It's you, that person, and God. So when you rely on God, he'll take a lot of that baggage off, and that person will help you through it. But when you try and do it without God, you're really just dumping it on the other person, and that's not fair.
Yes, I will say, God never puts anything in your life that you can't handle, even when it seems quite literally impossible.
With God's help.
With God's help. Yes.
Yeah.
That being said as well, I think that kind of brought the thought in my mind that I don't think a relationship is hard inherently, and I don't think marriage is inherently hard. I think life is inherently hard, and two people living life together is hard. It's not like the relationship itself. So I think applying that same thing with yourself, like challenges make us better. It used to be, it makes me better. Now it makes us better. So both our individual challenges can make us stronger. Both our together couple challenges can make us stronger. So I think applying that same mindset, it doesn't have to change.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What were the feelings that you recognized in yourself when you were knee deep in a toxic relationship to help others? Because some people may be feeling these same exact ways, and they need to recognize that they are, in fact, in a toxic relationship, which...
I love this question because I think when you're in a relationship, obviously there's going to be hard things. Obviously there's going to be challenges and trials and tough things that, that relationship has. But it should never, and this is my rule, and this is a rule I made after my toxic relationships that I've been through, which, trust me, is a handful. is you should be at least 80% happy with that person. Right? At least, at the bare minimum, you should be 80% happy when you're with that person. And if they're bringing you down 20% of the time, at least 80% of you is happy when you're with that person. Because in the feelings that I've felt in my previous relationships, I was 20% happy and 80% in pain and seeking for, I was craving that 20% so much that I stayed in that relationship because I was waiting for that 20% to come, or that 10%. Sometimes it was even 5% at times. And, so it should be, you're at least 80%. Like, obviously you're going to get a little annoyed with each other sometimes. Obviously, it's clear that there's, no relationship's perfect. Even though ours is like pretty perfect, but I'm not gonna go there.
That being said, when you as an individual are going through something hard in your life, it's going to make things harder for the other person, unfortunately. So I think separating, hey, are they going through something really hard and they just need an extra support right now? Or is it just always, they're just 80% of the time, like you said, you're just not happy with them. And it's sad because sometimes there really is only 5% that makes you happy, but you're still getting that every once in a while. So it gives you that glimmer of hope.
And you're just craving that.
Yeah.
But really there's a person, right down the street that's going to make you happy way more than
maybe
that.
A few blocks down, maybe not down the street.
Yeah, but you get the
within
gist.
the neighborhood, maybe
within the neighborhood, and
maybe
it's
not,
going to be a better
not.
fit, right? Like, but here's the other thing is when you have been through a couple relationships, you're going to find things that you really like in people in general. You're going to take those things that you really like and you're going to look for those things. So if that person was 90% making me miserable and 10% making me happy, when I end that relationship, I'm going to go look for someone that's going to turn that 10% of happiness in that same way, whether it's physical touch, whether it's words of affirmation. I'm going to go look for that in another person and look for them to make it a 90% instead of a 10% like that last person was giving me. But you can take things from each relationship and say, hey, I liked that, but I didn't like all this other stuff. So I'm just going to look for the things I like in someone now instead of all the other stuff that was toxic and dragging me down, right? And obviously, no one's going to be perfect except for you. You're perfect. But, just keep that in mind when you're looking for relationships. Like, don't be in a relationship where they're only making you happy a little bit of the time.
I haven't heard of that little percentage thing. That is cool. Probably because I don't have an ex, so I don't know. What can I say? Although I will say, I have had my fair share of awry situations.
All right, so so when a relationship is taking its trip to the slaughterhound,
yes,
which I'm perfect, and obviously, like, our relationship's 100% perfect, so we've never had to do that. What's your solution to problem solving?
What, when you just feel like, wow, this is just sucks. Like, as in just the relationship in itself is just kind of crap.
Well, you just have to, like, solve some problems. There's some differences that you have.
Differences, yes, that's the word. Oof.
And those differences, you're not accepting each other's differences, and so it's causing problems.
Guys, that's tricky. Oh, jeez. That's a thinker. I think you have to be open. I'm gonna say it. Agree to disagree. All right. I know it sounds crazy, but yeah, there's gonna be some things that, I'm sorry, you have to compromise on, Be like, hey, I do not agree with that, but if this means so much to you, I'll give a little, and vice versa. Which, you know, my parents
Some people
done.
some people really don't understand compromising. Like, they really think, oh, I have to find someone that's 100% a match for me, when really that's like pretty much impossible.
Not really real.
It's not realistic, right? You can find someone that's like 98, but still really, really hard, right? So you have to, like, you know, obviously you have to be willing to compromise. Be willing, you know, if someone really likes a modern looking table compared to an unmodern looking table.
I love how we're talking about tables. I was thinking about much bigger problems, but yeah, maybe
How are you going to make, you know, you got to find something that's in the middle, right?
not a farmhouse style table, not a modern table. Maybe we're going to meet in contemporary, traditional. I don't know. We'll see. After having unhealthy situations and experiences, what was one non-negotiable? Which is kind of like this 5% that you're talking about, okay? One non-negotiable in a future relationship that you decided was crucial. After you had all those awry experiences, you're like, what's something that I need to have that I bring to the table, or that they bring to the table, or we bring together? Like, what?
Yeah, so when I was seeking you out in the world and I couldn't find you for so long, I came to a couple thoughts. One was, I need someone that's going to be on the same, or at least willing to be on the same church level as me, be willing to go to church with me. But not even church, just like gospel and the belief in Jesus and God, and together how they can, you know, help us become better people. And I have God in the relationship, right? I realized that through all my toxicness in past,
Yeah.
2, I realized, and this is just like my take, I realized I need someone to lift at the gym with. So
Yeah, no, this is actually he had a list, I do believe. We came up with like 5 things, and that was second, so.
So, but that's also just like a coping mechanism. Like I was saying, I realized the gym was such a big part of my life. And, you know, I know there's a ton of jokes about how like the gym is like a whole person's personality. It's only half my personality, okay? The other half is snowboarding. Ask Bryn.
It's true.
So, yeah.
Well, I think you also just wanted someone with a similar coping mechanism, which was the gym. Does that make sense?
And that's what I'm
If
trying
his
to say.
coping mechanism was knitting or crocheting, I'm sure he would have wanted me to be an avid crocheter. So it's like, you know.
Yes.
There was this one guy that I was going out with, not him, unfortunately, and after he ended things, which, by the way, was crazy, he's now with someone not very good looking. Anyways, it does not matter. It doesn't matter. But I was so grateful, because in my head, I was like, I cannot imagine like having to compromise on stuff with him. I just didn't, I realized I wanted to actually like the person enough. I didn't just want them to like me. No. I know this sounds crazy, but I kind of, for a while there, was just like, hey, I really want to be a person that people will obsess over. Like, I kind of was using dating as a way for people to like make me feel really great about myself, because
So what you're telling me is you were dating people that you didn't like, but you were just seeking
I was thinking
affirmation from them.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
I see.
I think even like some of the guys, it's not like I hated everything about every guy, but I wasn't like, it was like a people pleaser thing. Like, I just wanted to make other people happy. And then I think my non-negotiable was like, hey, I want to legitimately enjoy this person as a whole. You know, obviously not in every single aspect. I'm going to just love someone, like every single thing about them, but a lot more than that. Just kind of, I think I finally was like accepting of the fact that I got to actually be able to obsess with them in a healthy way. Does that make sense? I know that all sounded kind of crazy.
No, that makes sense. So like what specifically what part, like just being attracted to them specifically, or just like
And that's
their
the thing.
personality?
That's the thing. It wasn't even look wise a lot of the time. It was just like they like this. I don't want to give examples, but like this guy really loved gaming, and I just like didn't bond with him over that. And I bonded. I can't even remember what my interest was. I think yeah. I was talking about art and stuff, and he just like did not accept it like at all. And I was like, well, I love art. Like, you're not gonna even like pretend to care. You know what I'm saying? And so there was just too many things that just didn't align. And you don't have to love what I love, but you have to at least accept that I like something.
Yeah,
Does that
for
make
sure.
sense? Yeah.